Good morning to all attending the RTA's meeting of the Board of Directors. Thank you for braving our first little winter storm. We have a director or two that is under the weather. For those of you who are online, thank you for joining us. I want to review the guidelines for our meeting this morning. For those members who are in person, please turn on your microphones when you wish to speak and off when you are done so that we limit the mics that are on at any one given time. I will call on those persons with questions or comments for those who are attending in person. For those who are remote, keep your audio on mute as much as possible to minimize the background noise, which may impair the recording. And when you have a question or comment, please raise your virtual hand and the board secretary, Mr. LaMarche, will call on board members who have raised their hands one at a time. When he calls on you, lower your hand and unmute before speaking. With that, will everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Mr. Secretary, can you please take the roll?
Yes. Director Indulcio. Director Carey.
Present.
Director Colson. Here. Director Fuentes.
Here.
Director Gavin.
Here.
Director Gorman. Director Groven.
Here.
Director Holt. Director Cotel. Director Lewis. Director Melvin.
Here.
Director Pang.
Here.
Director Ross.
Here.
Director Sager.
Here.
Chairman Dillard.
Present.
Coming back to Director Indulcio. Director Lewis. One moment, Mr. Chairman.
All right, I know Director Indulcio was on. We'll find him.
I am back on. Can you
There we
hear
go.
me? Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have 12 present, Mr. Chairman, 3 absent.
Great. Thank you very much. We will proceed. Item 3 is the approval of the minutes from the board meeting held on December 15th, 2022. Any comments or corrections? If not, how about a motion and a second that these minutes be approved? Director Carey moves, seconded by Director Pang, that we approve the minutes from the board meeting held on December 15th of 2022. Mr. Secretary, since this is our first roll call of the day, please take one orally.
Director Indulcio.
Aye.
Director Carey.
Aye.
Director Colson. Director Fuentes.
Aye.
Director Gavin.
Aye.
Director Gorman.
Aye.
Director Groven.
Aye.
Director Melvin. Yes. Director Pang.
Yes.
Director Ross.
Yes.
Director Sager.
Yes.
Chairman Dillard.
Yes.
12 ayes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And the minutes are approved from last time. Item 4 is the public comment segment of the meeting. Any comments received now will be read into the record by the board secretary. Do you receive any written comments, Mr. Secretary?
We've received no written comments, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. And I know that there are folks present today that wish to testify. How about we begin with Audrey Wennick from the Metropolitan Plan Commission. Hi, Audrey.
Good morning. I am Audrey Wennick, Senior Director at the Metropolitan Planning Council, and thank you for this opportunity to speak to the board about the RTA strategic plan. MPC and many other advocates have always championed transit. We view our system as one of our region's prime jewels, representing billions in public investment over a century. We absolutely must preserve and improve our transit system. We were glad to participate in the comprehensive engagement process that went into the strategic plan. There are many good ideas documented in the plan. We also want to highlight some areas that could be improved and that we hope will be addressed in implementation. We want to communicate to you the urgency of RTA taking a strong leadership role on coordination through implementation. As we know, RTA is charged with long-term planning for transit in Northeastern Illinois. We need this agency to feel empowered to envision and work toward change during this time of tremendous transformation for transit. We're eager to see several shared activities defined that the RTA will lead, such as a regional climate action plan, piloting a regional reduced fare program, a regional accessibility improvement program, and a cross-sector regional safety and security summit. We need the board to ask this agency to move quickly to do the things identified for 2023 and to already be working to identify future actions. Specifically, the RTA should be setting ambitious and realistic time-related targets for realizing goals outlined throughout the plan. Instead, this plan lists only 2023 activities and vaguer long-term goals. This is a 5-year plan. What are our objectives for 5 years from now? Also, the section on measuring progress has very few concrete targets, only identifying what will be measured and not what the goal is. We need to push ourselves. RTA needs to define barriers to achieving better regional coordination between the 3 service boards and government agencies and identify ways to address them. We're particularly interested in the safety summit. We're so pleased to see this in the plan, and we need to see it happen quickly and for new creative solutions to be implemented. As we've all seen with front page news stories in the Tribune over the past few days, these issues continue to be front and center as we seek to rebuild transit ridership. We also need to honestly evaluate how we are using budget resources now and if they are working. For example, we'd like to know how the CTA's huge contracts for security guards and police dogs are working and if they can be used more effectively to compassionately de-escalate safety situations before they become harmful. We recognize it's going to be very hard to ask for more resources for transit given the impending financial cliff if we don't get transit working better now. RTA needs to actively play a role ensuring that we get to solutions quickly. We need to be working very hard to improve the customer experience before we ask legislators to make hard choices. There are also very many other dimensions of how we reshape transit to address problems that already existed before the pandemic and were exacerbated by it. MPC is especially interested in supporting and following initiatives listed in the strategic plan, which have the potential to lead us into a transit future that will meet the needs of this region. For example, advocacy for equitable transit-oriented development in communities that host transit services, including standards for land use. To make Metro competitive for the future, much work needs to be done in this area. How do we turn empty parking lots into housing and commercial destinations that leverage transit? How can RTA take a proactive leadership role? Revision to the capital project evaluation system using measures to communicate impacts of projects and inform project prioritization. We are eager to see how this improved process can prioritize resources to deliver regional rider-centered outcomes. Transparent performance-based planning continues to be an area where focus is needed. Advancing bus rapid transit. We have been talking about BRT in Chicago for decades. MPC published a report advocating for it in 2011, yet very little has been built. How can RTA support and help our region move forward more quickly on this? And then finally, supporting Metro's study of regional rail. We're going to need different things from Metro given changes to commuter habits. How can we leverage this huge asset, and what role can RTA take in bringing ideas from around the world to this region to generate bold ideas for the future? We urge RTA staff to feel empowered to bring ideas and energy and coordinate shared projects immediately so we can quickly demonstrate how our transit system is transforming itself to meet riders' evolving needs. While the fiscal crisis is a crisis, we must approach this period with determination to use it to deliver an even better and more responsive transit system that helps save the climate, improves access to opportunity, improves public health. We look forward to working with you to ensure this plan lives up to its potential.
Great. Thank you very much. Any comments or questions from the board? If not, thank you as always. MPC's been great partners with us, and we deeply appreciate your input and working with you throughout the years and in the future too. Thanks, Audrey.
Thank you.
Is Alderman Vasquez on, Jeremy?
Yes, I believe he's on virtually.
Alderman, Andre, good morning. If you can hear us, we very much appreciate you joining us, and the floor is yours, Alderman.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay?
We sure can. Thank you.
Yeah, well, first I want to thank you all for just committing the time and energy to put forth a plan. I think it's clear that in the moment we find ourselves in, I don't think it's hyperbole to say that we're in somewhat of a transit crisis, right? We've seen the issues, as Audrey mentioned before I did, that were exacerbated through the pandemic, but they were not issues that were new. When we see things such as like our unhoused population taking trains as shelter and it not having proper responses, right? Not looking at teams that could actually be there, social workers who could help in the long term. These are not things that are new ideas. This is not a new problem, but it's something that I feel has not been addressed properly. And my concern is in looking at the RTA plan is that it is very general in a way that I think doesn't meet the moment, no pun intended, but needs to. That, you know, the RTA should really lean on the A and show more authority in holding some folks accountable. I think we need more specific plans. I think we need the kind of accountability that would be necessary with any organization that needs improvement. And I think, you know, CTA is kind of what the focus has been for us here at the city, looking at the ghost buses, looking at President Dorval, who for a while was not able to even come to hearings. And so what I really would want to see from RTA are plans that are very specific, that provide SMART goals, that have measures of achievement. And though I see some, it's not enough for what we see happening now. And my fear is that if there isn't enough action taken at every level that affects our transit system, we're only going to watch it continue to go in the wrong direction. And if we don't ultimately have a strong transit system in the city goes into the same direction transit will. You know, we've been trying to push at the city council level, and again, only been in city council for about 3.5 years, to get a BRT going on streets like Western Avenue, where we know it would improve times, it would improve scheduling, it would improve commute, it would lessen the concerns people have when they're trying to get to work. And so what I would urge RTA to do is not only present plans, but really hold people accountable and present measurable goals and make sure to call out any of the different boards when they're not executing, because at the city level, we're dealing with the ramifications of not enough initiative being taken. I struggle in looking at the fact that there are so many different governing bodies to understand how they actually work together to get things done. So I would implore you all to please make sure that there's more accountability in place and that you guys flex your authority. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alderman, very, very, very much. And we look forward to working with you. Thanks for being an advocate and actually paying attention, which I deeply appreciate. And, you know, you can help us with CDOT. You can help us with the CTA, which is generally mayoral appointments. And, you know, like everybody that's listening, we're all in this together. This transit is the answer, is not the be all end all. And you know, everybody that wants to, like the line of the offensive line of the Kansas City Chiefs, we all got to push together. And but you know, the biggest thing is having people pay attention like you, Alderman, is very, very, very helpful and deeply appreciated. And we will, Andre, we will be in touch early and often.
Thank you. I look forward to it.
Thank you. Any other board members want to say anything other than thanks to the Alderman? Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it, Alderman. Thanks. Next is Courtney Hoyt. I think she is also virtual, Mr. LaMarche.
Yes, that's my understanding.
Courtney, are you still with us?
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we sure can. Thank you for joining us.
Wonderful, thank you for having me. My name is Courtney Hoyt. I'm representing the group Commuters Taking Action. First of all, thank you very much to everyone involved with the drafting of the RTA specific plan, strategic plan, both for your efforts leading up to publishing this draft and for allowing me to speak today. As a member of a group that's deeply invested in the success of our transit systems, it's heartening to see agencies taking these challenges seriously and displaying efforts to solve them. But while the strategic plan is built on admirable principles, there are many shortcomings we believe the RTA can improve on. Our major concern is that this plan skips necessary details on how these goals will be achieved, leaving agencies without a roadmap. And just as importantly, this leaves the public without a mechanism by which to measure agencies' implementation. The RTA needs to be more prescriptive about the steps various parties need to take to create a more connected, thriving region. And as Alderman Vasquez said, we should set a concrete schedule for realizing the goals in this plan. For example, the plan identifies the crucial goal of creating better regional coordination between the CTA, Metra, and PACE, but does not describe the steps of how to do so. Another item that we all agree will be a large challenge for the region is the 2026 fiscal cliff. We're pleased that the RTA identifies pursuing additional funding to maintain our transit system, but the plan lacks specifics on the role the RTA will play in this process and the steps the agency will take to establish new funding sources. Here, as in other places in the report, the RTA only suggests 2023 activities. If the CTA, Metra, and PACE need to implement changes leading up to 2026, why would the RTA, as a body that leads coordination between these agencies, not offer steps that each agency can take through this time period? Without specifics, we fear the RTA cannot be a leader in this process, and the public cannot press agencies for implementation of action items. The plan also needs to define a timeline of necessary actions for our region's transit agencies to achieve full fare integration. Define what upgrades will be pursued in the Venture 2.0 rollout in 2024 and 2025. The current Metro will, quote, begin installation of ticket vending machines, which could eventually accept Venture payments, is simply inadequate. Again, there are no specifics and no timelines upon which the public can expect implementation. Additionally, the Northeast Illinois region has received an unprecedented amount of federal funding available for bus rapid transit projects to facilitate bus corridor upgrades. And as the speaker before me identified, the RTA must publish steps that this body, the CTA, and PACE to take to deploy these funds for bus corridor upgrades. Like other sections, this plan lacks specific goals. We applaud the RTA's commitment to creating a greener fleet of buses. However, in the current form, the plan lacks concrete goals for purchasing additional electric buses. Without a specific, measurable goal, we fear this goal will not be realized. In all of these instances, the strategic plan only offers vague plans of action for 2023. This plan is updated every 5 years and is meant to lead coordination for the full time frame. So why isn't the RTA offering a 5-year roadmap? Instead of leading coordination between the agencies, the RTA is instead issuing vague and unmeasurable goals. Where there should be prescriptive and ambitious schedules, the plan instead only lists 2023 activities. This leaves the CTA, PACE, and Metra with undefined steps to success and leaves the public unable to hold these agencies accountable and advocate for measurable progress. In my work with commuters taking action, we hear daily from people whose lives are impacted by unreliable transit, whether that's being late for work, having less time to spend with friends or family, or being left in the cold waiting for a bus or train. We understand how unreliable and inefficient transit impacts normal citizens' everyday lives. As Alderman Vasquez said before me, there are a number of governing bodies here, and each have separate functions but still need to work together. Our fear is that without leadership, without measurable timelines, the RTA will fail to lead the region to achieve these goals, and the public will be unable to help them do so. To achieve these goals, the RTA must act as a true leader in the transit space. So to do so, the RTA must remove suggestion and ambiguity and begin to truly lead with specific measurable goals. We look forward to working with you in realizing these goals. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Courtney. Any comments, anything from the board? If not, we look forward, Courtney, to working with you and your organization. And again, thank you very much for your interest in mass transit, and you can help us find some of these answers. And we look forward to, taking your input and helping us move transit forward in our region. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Nee. Kevin Baker. Kevin, you here? Hey, Kevin, how are you? Good morning. Step on up.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and directors. My name is Kevin Brubaker. I'm the Deputy Executive Director of the Environmental Law and Policy Center. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about your draft strategic plan, Transit is the Answer. ELPC firmly agrees with you that transit is the answer. As we've been telling all mayoral candidates, Chicago cannot prosper as a region and cannot meet its climate goals without a robust transit system. So we heartily support the draft plan's goals. Unfortunately, though, the plan to achieve them is woefully absent. Imagine if a loved one declared to you, "I'm going to lose weight this year and get healthy." You'd probably say something encouraging, but doubt their ability to accomplish it. Imagine instead if that same loved one told you, "I'm seeing a personal trainer twice a week. My goal is to lose 3 pounds every week, and I'm limiting myself to 2 drinks every week." You'd genuinely congratulate that person toward their attempt to lose weight and gain health. And this would be an invitation to check in with them on how they were moving toward achieving those goals. Unfortunately, this draft plan sounds more like the first vague goal than the second action plan. To take just one example, RTA's planned role in fare integration, an issue that we've all been working toward for decades now. All the draft plan assures readers is that, quote, "The agencies are participating in a joint effort led by Cook County in 2022-23 to further analyze fare integration," end quote. Similarly, instead of a plan to solve the transit fiscal crisis, what we have here is a plan to address the fiscal crisis. Contrast that lack of specificity with Metra's draft strategic plan on their point concerning racial equity. Different issue, but contrast the language. Quote, "Metra will be participating in APTA's racial equity pilot program to test our existing policies, programs, and practices to ensure racial equity. We'll ultimately hold leadership accountable for our equity strategies and DEI results by linking pay increases to our performance in these areas," end quote. Specificity is possible. In short, we applaud RTA for the goals set forth in this plan, but we seek a plan with specific, measurable actions by which we and you can hold the agency accountable. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin, very much. Look forward to working with you, and thanks for your interest in this topic too. Any other board members say anything? Thank you. And to everyone that addressed us today and that's listening, please, if you have specific things you think we ought to be doing, always reach out to us and send us your suggestions, or call me or call Leanne and or Jill Leary, our chief of staff and planner, and we will try to address them. Thank you. All right. Number 5, item 5 is the executive director's report. Leanne, good morning.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board, and all the guests who are here in person and online. Appreciate you joining us. And I'm happy to see that many of our partners and colleagues have joined us today as we ask you to consider the adoption of the strategic plan, Transit is the Answer. I want to specifically thank those who have come and given us public comments today. We're grateful that each of you have taken the time to speak with us and share with us your passion, your thoughts for improving the transit system. It has been incredibly helpful as we've gotten to get us to even this point. We also share, I think, your desire to see progress on the implementation and look forward to continuing to work with you on the items you've raised today with the board. And points you've raised to us in other conversations that we have had as we really move to the implementation of this plan. Developing the plan was sort of step 1, adopting the plan is step 2, and now we have to begin the hard work of actually doing things. So there will be a lot more coming in terms of details. We have a very busy agenda, but before I go any further, I just want to make note of the untimely passing of Lawrence Nassau. I think many of you knew him personally and had worked with him in his capacity as president of the Civic Federation. He had been there for 21 years and has left behind really a remarkable legacy of work for all of us. As a finance and oversight agency, we here at the RTA especially really appreciated his input, guidance, counsel, calling it out plainly, as he would do. And I think it's a big loss, a shocking and a big loss to all of us especially in the public sector space. My last conversation with Lawrence was probably about a month and a half ago, and he was actually calling me about the strategic plan and talking about a few things. And he, though, is also an avid bike rider, and was talking to me about how do we get better connections between bikeways and transit and sort of stuff. And I'm like, okay, let's talk about some of the big stuff first, and then we can talk about the weeds. But I mean, he was truly passionate and would take time. And I think we were both talking on a public holiday, to care about this stuff. So I know I speak for everybody here, expressing my deep condolences to his family and his colleagues. I have a few other announcements before I give a brief legislative update and a preview of the agenda. So first, the governor's emergency declaration on COVID that allowed us to conduct fully remote meetings as an exception to the Open Meetings Act during the pandemic is planned to end on May 11th because we have moved, and we made it today, moved to in-person meetings. This shouldn't really impact us. But I just wanted to make you aware that we will return to the pre-COVID Open Meeting Act requirements after that time, and will require a quorum to be physically present to hold an actual meeting. We'll monitor whether there are any further changes or exceptions or flexibility in the Open Meetings Act requirements proposed in Springfield in response to ending this emergency declaration that could potentially play out over the next couple of months, and we'll keep you updated if there are any changes. I will just note too that we will be keeping the virtual component in terms of people being able to tune in and join us from the public remotely to comment or listen in. That will remain as part of it even post the declaration end. Second, I just want to remind you all that the chairman is going to be speaking about Transit is the Answer at City Club next Wednesday, next week on February 22nd. He's also scheduled to be at the Union League Club as part of the Lincoln Forum to discuss the plan on April 23. So if you have any questions about those events, just let us know and we can get you more details. And then thirdly, before I provide the rest of my report, I just want to take a moment to introduce to everyone. I know I did a quick intro to some of you previous to the meeting starting, but introduce you to our new CFO. And the extra part of the title is Deputy Executive Director of Finance, Innovation and Technology. So he was busy this morning, but Kevin Bueso. And Kevin, if you just want to stand really quickly and wave. I know I did get to, you got to meet him briefly, some of you. He comes to us after serving 3 years, most recently 3 years as CFO of McHenry County, as part of a 16-year career in local government finance. Among his many accomplishments, Kevin helped create the first Illinois chapter of Local Government Hispanic Network, and has recently been profiled in the GFOA review. He has also also been in CFO magazine. You can see his press release on our websites to learn more about Kevin's accomplishments, but I look forward to, having the opportunity for you to get to know Kevin a little bit more and continue to work with him. We're thrilled to have him part of our team. So moving on to the next slide, please. Just a couple of updates related to government affairs. Activities. Yesterday, Governor Pritzker, as you probably heard, delivered the joint state of the state and the annual state budget address, effectively beginning the state budget process. The proposed FY24 state operating budget includes $49 billion in general revenue fund expenditures, a slight decrease from 23. There were no proposed cuts to the RTA's Public Transportation Fund state sales tax match, so that's good news. There was also a $2 million total proposed increase to ADA paratransit and the reduced fare funding for FY 2023 funding levels. In January, the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, CMAP, kicked off their plan of action for regional transit process. You probably recall CMAP made a presentation I think it was at our December meeting, to give you kind of an overview of that, but that work has formally kicked off. As a reminder, that is connected to legislation that was passed by the General Assembly last year that called for CMAP to develop legislative recommendations focused on the transit system funding, on policy, and on implementation. The first meeting established 3 working groups, which will focus on specific transit issues. A steering committee of individuals from the business community and not-for-profit sectors is tasked with helping develop those recommendations. The group will meet quarterly through the summer to prepare a draft to be considered by the Metropolitan Planning Organization, or the MPO, at its fall meeting. Following, hopefully, the adoption of that plan by the MPO, the final report must then be delivered to the Governor and the Illinois General Assembly by January 1, 2024. Also in December, the FTA awarded the Chicago region more than $185 million in federal funds to improve accessibility for people with disabilities. The CTA received $118.5 million. While Metro received $66.6 million. The All Stations Accessibility Program for a new federal grant program established in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act was championed by Senator Tammy Duckworth and other members of Congress, the Illinois delegation. And that program actually was inspired by CTA's own All Stations Accessibility Program. So the work being done here by CTA became the model for the nation, and excited that we were able to tap in that first round of funds out of that program for this region. In January, the region also received more good news, with the U.S. Department of Transportation awarding Metra a $117 million mega grant to rebuild the Union Pacific North Line from Fullerton to Addison. So bringing home some of the money that goes to DC, bringing it back here for actual real projects. That's some good news. So next slide, please. Real quickly on today's agenda, got a lot to cover. After my report, you'll hear from staff, including a short video, and then hear from leaders of the service boards about Transit is the Answer strategic plan before asking you to actually vote to hopefully approve that. I want to thank my colleagues, Melinda Metzger, Jim Dewinski, and representing CTA, Nora Learson, who will be here to make a few comments. And the commitment of your time, their staff time, from the service boards really has been critical to us developing this plan, and we really deeply appreciate their support now and in the future. I want to thank each director for your guidance and leadership as we have crafted this plan over the last year, and we really look forward to transitioning to implementation of the action and advocacy items as we have outlined going forward, and there'll be a lot more to hear from us in the coming months. Once we've concluded a vote on the plan, you'll hear for a few more informational items, including an update on the last RCAB, the RTA Citizens Advisory Committees, and from the chair, Jackie Forbes, followed by a presentation on the 23 audit plan, not the financial, but the general audits that the RTA is responsible for completing. And this year's community planning program of projects, the quarterly performance report, and for the fourth quarter of 22. Following that, you'll be asked for votes on the fourth quarter financial results, the intergovernmental agreement regarding paratransit certification site trips with PACE, and an ordinance approving contracts for this year's slate of community planning projects. And then finally, we will ask you for approval on a contract for consultant support on some TOD planning work for the Village of Homewood, I should say. Talking to my kids too much. Sorry. That concludes my report. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Leanne. Any questions of Leanne? If not, let's move on to item 6A, and that's the adoption of our regional transit strategic plan. Transit is the Answer. And Jessica Hector-Sue will introduce the staff for a short presentation, and then Jessica will introduce us to a video we are going to use.
Yeah, good morning. Hi, everyone. Good morning. So I am Jessica Hector-Sue. I'm the Director of Planning here at RTA, as you well know by now. So we've been working with you over the last 18 months to develop our next strategic plan, and today we're at the final step of that, and it is before you for adoption. What we're going to do today is we are going to tell you a little bit about what we heard in public comment and our staff recommendations related to that. And then we're going to show you some of the plan elements now that it's in full design. And then we'll talk a little bit about next steps and show you a video. And while the video is playing, we'll move back and invite our service board leadership here to share some thoughts with you. And then we'll turn it back to the chairman for some discussion and the vote. So that's what we'll do. So on the next slide, as we get started, I want to remind you just how you've been involved in this process. Recall that we kicked off the process in August of 2021 with a workshop with all of you, where you really set the tone and you helped us decide what we would focus on. We then invited guest speakers to speak with you at your meetings throughout fall of 2021, where we heard a lot of voices along with the surveys, the guest blogs, and all the other ways that we solicited input from people at that point in the process very early on to help us understand what we should focus on. In February of 2022, a year ago right now, we came back to you and told you what we heard from all of that input, and we shared with you a recommended vision, some principles, some outcomes, and we put that out for public comment also at that time. And in March, we came back to you and we told you what we heard from that public comment. We then commenced stakeholder working groups that you all were a part of, or several of you, I should say, were a part of. And we gave you all updates during your board meetings while those working groups were underway between April and June. We continued to work with that group. And then we gave you updates in August as we finished up those stakeholder working groups and finished up the 2 technical groups that we had operating. And at that point, we had a preliminary advocacy and action agenda that is a core part of the plan still today. And we put that out for public comment again and met with several groups about it. We gave you updates about that in September, and in October, we told you what we heard from the input that we got from many people that we met with throughout the fall. In December, we had a draft plan that was just a text version that we presented to you, and again, invited you to participate in a hearing, I should say, that we had with the budget and to share the plan with your networks. And today we're back for final plan adoption as planned. So on the next slide, let me tell you what's happened since the December meeting. We have received and processed our public comment. Recall that the plan was released publicly on December 5th. We distributed it in a number of ways, and it was available for comment through January 9th. People could give us comments through the website, through email, through regular mail. And on the next slide, we have a summary of the comments that we received. We got 36 comments from 42 individual and organizations. Common themes from those comments included support for transit and for the plan, which is always good to see. We also got many comments about funding, both people voicing support of funding and others raising questions or concerns about what funding could look like. We heard about safety and security and reliability. We heard about electrification and the need to aim for zero emissions. We also heard about fair affordability and integration. And we heard about other topics like adaptation and last mile connections, as well as governance reform. So in the board memo, we provided all of those comments to you so that you could review them, and a response to those comments as well as a staff recommendation. To summarize really for the purposes of the presentation, we did read all the comments and took note of them and found that a couple of them we think do warrant some changes to the plan document. So the changes that we have recommended include first to change the terminology related to near zero emission to zero emissions. The 5th action area as a result is now to accelerate the transition to zero emission regional transit system and prioritize communities burdened by poor air quality. This change was in response that we received from several commenters, even at your last meeting, about the fact that near zero terminology had a very specific meaning that was not our intent. So we have changed that. The second change is that we have added an acknowledgement about the need to continue to work with stakeholders on implementation next steps. This change was made in response to several comments that we received from in letters in your board packet, but also as commenters were sharing again today from stakeholders that they really want to see more details around both funding options and other next steps. So we really firmly think that this plan is the first step on agreeing to what our priorities are, and that once the plan is adopted, we can turn to implementation. So we added a statement about that. The third category of changes are really small editorial changes. We cleaned up some corrections and it made some improvements during final review that really have no consequence for the policy elements. So these are the three types of changes that have been made relative to the draft. The rest of the text has not changed significantly. That said, it is now in full design. So it looks very different. It includes a lot of photography to really highlight the human experience that's been an important part of the process all along. It also includes some very intentionally designed infographics that we hope to be able to use over the next year as we pursue more funding for transit. So what we want to do now is walk you through some of these elements. You will have seen and recalled parts of it, but you have not seen it in layout until you're seeing the final version. So we want to do that. I have with me several key members of the staff who've been really an important part of this project and have really made these parts happen. So they're going to help me share with you what's in the plan. So I'm going to turn it over first to Melissa.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Melissa Meyer, Communications Manager at the RTA. Our team helps support the engagement efforts that have taken place over the last 18 months. And these faces on the screen are just some of the many people that we've heard from along the way. So you'll recall that we've engaged thousands of people in development of the plan, from one-on-one meetings to large public events in every county. And we're very grateful for the contributions of stakeholders, working group members, survey respondents, all of you. And we really want to thank you for your input along the way so that we can say this plan was truly co-created. We also appreciate the work of many consultants, RTA staff members across all departments who helped to make these engagement efforts possible, from facilitating working groups to helping develop contracts that allowed us to compensate working group members for their time, to ensuring that we had the right technology to assist as we navigated a hybrid environment over the last couple years. So this plan gives great documentation of the listening, the coalescing, the creation that happened, and also lets you see some of the people that we met and spoke to who were so passionate about the future of our transit system. Next slide. We also interviewed about 20 riders, working group members, or stakeholders more in depth to hear their stories about why transit matters to them. And this was a really moving process where people told us how life-changing transit is and how essential it is that we work together for its future. These stories are throughout the plan, through photos and quotes, but we also captured video of each interviewee that we'll use over the next year in promotional and campaign materials to put real faces to the important issues that we're trying to solve. And you'll see some of these in the video that we'll share in just a little bit. Next slide. So all of that work to speak to so many people around the region led us to the plan's vision, which you know well by now, and is up on the screen and in the plan very prominently. The vision of this plan is safe, reliable, accessible public transportation that connects people to opportunity, advances equity, and combats climate change. Next slide. And the new principles we have that will continue to guide our work. Equity, stewardship, and committed to change are also prominently featured in the plan. I'm going to hand it off to my colleague Peter to talk a bit more about the financial story that this plan tells, both in terms of operating and capital funding.
Okay, thank you, Melissa. It is on. Okay. The plan also makes a case for more funding by presenting the stark reality of the system's over-reliance on fares and the operating funding crisis that the system could face in a couple of years. The $730 million potential funding gap is reiterated and explained using graphics. Next slide. And also the 11 funding options that we evaluated as potential solutions are also prominently featured. We are grateful to the work of Doug Anderson and Bill Ackman and our former CFO, Rainey Hickey, in guiding the work of the 10-year financial plan team, And as we finish the plan, one of the tasks will be to advance these concepts both in the policy space and to discuss them with key stakeholders. Next slide. And as we discuss new revenues, we also want to be clear about the value that transit brings to the region. The whole section of the plan is dedicated to highlighting the benefits of transit to individual households, to our economy, our society, and our environment. This slide shows some of the economic impacts that we have estimated. For example, 126,000 jobs supported by RTA and the service boards, creating $5.6 billion of economic activity. Or put another way, every $1 invested in transit yields $3.86 in benefits. And this is the fraction of the benefits. As we work toward implementation, we will be sharing these benefits with people so they know that transit is a good investment. Next slide. The plan also makes clear the need for ongoing capital funding. Although both state and federal funds have been bolstered, the capital program, more is needed. You'll recall that the priority project group that was led by Brian Lowenberg from our capital team and myself came up with some new metrics for evaluating projects to be included in the regional capital program. And those are given nice treatment in the plan, and we are already in the work of implementing them. So I'll now turn it over to Peter Kirsten to talk about the agenda for advocacy and action.
Thank you. So the second half of the plan is dedicated to the agenda for advocacy and action. As mentioned, this is a co-created agenda, people, riders, partners, and stakeholders that we engage with throughout the plan development process, which also includes many of you. So this slide shows the 7 advocacy items on the agenda. This list represents the longer term issues that will need stakeholders to help advance. Next slide. The plan also includes added background detail and why each item is important, peer examples, data callouts that can be useful in making the argument, as well as progress and accomplishments that have been made since the last strategic plan, Invest in Transit. And then lastly, each item includes specific advocacy work for 2023. Next slide. The 7 action items list is shown on this slide. The action list includes things that are more immediate, things that the RTA and the service boards can take the lead to implement. Each action includes information about, again, why this is important, supporting information such as peer examples, as well as a short description of what perhaps is possible if the region works together to pursue more resources, which in many cases, this is funding we're talking about, but also political will. Collective action and building more capacity within the region. Next slide. So as part of that, a key focus is the activities that we are committing to undertake in 2023. These are indicated throughout the agenda and then listed separately at the beginning and at the end of the plan document. The actions are shown here on this slide and are kind of divided between 3 categories of funding, rider experience, and thriving communities. So in 2023, in this year, we will take affirmative steps towards securing increased funding for transit operations. We will deliver a set of new regional transit initiatives that will make the system better for riders. And we'll collaboratively begin development of 3 regional action plans to program investments that support a thriving region. So the plan details explicit actions under each of these 3. And with adoption of the plan, you can expect to be hearing much more about these activities as we begin implementation. Next slide. So the plan ends kind of with returning to the outcomes that we articulated at the beginning. So about a year ago, we released an emerging vision for regional transit, which continues to guide our work, principles, and then 6 outcomes that we're aiming to realize. The outcomes are divided between outcomes for the transit system and then outcomes for the type of region that a great transit system can help build. So to remind you of those, for the system, we envision in the future our system will be in a state of good repair, financially stable, safe, accessible, reliable, and useful for riders. We envision in the future that our region will be connected, winning the fight against climate change and thriving. Next slide. So we're measuring our progress against success of realizing these futures. This slide shows metrics for the transit system, including many familiar measures, such as fare revenue per passenger trip, on-time performance, customer satisfaction. as well as new measures such as the inventory of ADA accessible and non-compliant facilities, the ratio of operated to scheduled service, and the number of passengers transferring between service boards. Next slide. And then this slide shows the metrics that we're keeping an eye on to measure our success toward realizing the vision for the region. Many of these metrics are new and include things like regional miles of dedicated bus lanes, transit travel time competitiveness to auto, regional transit system emissions, tons of carbon dioxide per passenger mile, and the share of new building and affordable housing permits within a half mile of quality transit. Next slide. The plan finishes by asking people to stay engaged and to join our Transit is the Answer coalition. With that, I just want to say personally, thank you again for your participation and guidance throughout this process. And I will pass it over to Jessica for next steps.
All right, so that gives you an overview now of what is in the fully designed plan. The electronic copy was shared with you, and then there should be a printed copy at all of your places as well if you'd like to thumb through it. We have already started to advance some of the items in the plan, and we will continue to do so in 2023 through the 9 shared activities that PK just talked through. Staff will be giving regular updates to you at your meetings, and then we also plan to host quarterly coalition meetings with the Transit is the Answer coalition that PK just mentioned as well. So with that, I want to thank you for your leadership over the last 18 months. Thanks also to Leanne and to Jill and to Tina and the rest of the RTA executive team for their support of our work. Thank you to the service board leadership and to our colleagues there. Thank you also to Tina and Peter and PK and Melissa for their hours of time and dedication to the project. It's an excellent product, and the numerous other people at RTA who've been involved. There are really too many for me to mention, but we appreciate everybody who contributed to this. So with that, we are now going to show you a video that is the summary of all of this. While the video is showing, we're going to move back into the audience, and our service board leadership will come up here to share their thoughts on the plan, and then it will be back to the chairman to take questions and conversation and a vote. So thank you.
Doors closing. Transit is the answer to many of the most pressing challenges our city, our region, our state, our country is facing.
Transit is what makes large cities like Chicago possible.
If you look at cities across the world, the most successful ones, what we call global cities, what they all have in common is great transit system.
People sometimes forget that public transit is for the public.
When you think about it, it gives access to goods and services, fresh food, job opportunities, education. Everyone should have access to transportation.
Transit means a lot to me. It makes most of my life possible. To be able to have a way to accessibly get around has made it possible for me to have a career, family, the life I have. So my life would be a lot different, and I think a lot less of what I would want in my life if it weren't for transit.
If we lose transit, we are losing our competitiveness as a global region. We're losing equity. We're making our region more segregated and more disconnected from opportunity. And we are growing into the wrong direction if we lose transit. We're growing into a direction of the haves and the have-nots, and the vast majority of us will be disconnected.
If we do not, as a region, as a state, come together around a funding solution to help us with to fill the shortfall in the transit agency budgets, I think what we're probably looking at is some pretty serious service cuts, pretty serious fare increases. And I think that we don't want to be in that place, because you can be in a spiral where decreases in ridership then lead to higher fares, and higher fares lead to decreases in ridership. But in the end, we need additional resources to be put into the transit system so that we can run a level of service that actually makes the transit system really useful to more customers.
We're in a period of multiple intersecting crises, and we need to be innovative and we need to be bold to solve those crises. And that includes being really creative about solving our transit problems.
The work group process was really important. It was a chance for many voices to be at the table. And I think that process led to hopefully a better informed plan than has been proposed in the past. We heard from all kinds of communities across the region, folks from different racial and economic backgrounds. We need transit to work for everyone.
I think we need to be able to change and do things differently and accept that the way that we've been transporting people for 50 years, in some ways, it will continue to be the same, but in other ways may change very radically. And I think we need to be open to that.
The public benefit, I think, is clear and recognized by people whether or not they use the system. And we need the funding structure to catch up with that and recognize the public benefit the system provides and start funding it appropriately.
I'm pretty optimistic. I think the current challenges provide fertile soil for improvements if enough people make enough noise. I don't want it to become a situation where it's just so bad and we give up. I think this can really be a turning point. I love the Belmont rail station where I have the red line, the brown line, and the purple line.
I would take the Metro Electric line.
I'm a Green Line train rider.
I take the 60 bus, take the 18 bus, and I take the pink line.
I take Metra, Union Pacific North Line from Ravinia to downtown.
Then ride the Metro BNSF train, and I'm a transit super fan.
Transit is the answer for keeping our region accessible, affordable, and sustainable.
Transit is the key.
El transporte público es la respuesta. There is no future for Chicago without a strong transit system. That's the bottom line.
Transit is the answer for everyone to be able to live an independent and fulfilling life.
Transit is the answer. Just make it affordable for everybody, make it more accessible, and make it safe.
I know it can be better, and I'm looking forward to the day that it is better.
Outstanding. All right. I'd like to now introduce the service board's leadership. Jim Derwinski, the CEO and Executive Director of Metra, Melinda Metzger, the Executive Director at PACE, and Nora Learshin, the Chief of Staff at the CTA, for their comments on the strategic plan. And thank you to all of you and to the service boards for your cooperation and work on this plan. Thank you. Start with the CTA. Do that.
Good morning. My name is Nora Learson, and I am the Chief of Staff at the Chicago Transit Authority. Thank you for having me here today to discuss RTA's strategic plan. As many people have already stated, we are at a critical moment for our industry and our region, and there is value in partnering to strategize about how we can work together to meet the demands of the future. For 3 years, we have adapted at every turn to never-before-seen scenarios for our agencies, each challenge serving to illuminate the dedication and tenacity of the people who deliver service to our riders every day. Today, as RTA's plan acknowledges, we face yet another unprecedented scenario: funding uncertainty in a few short years once our federal relief funds are spent. CTA welcomes the report's attention to this issue, as RTA is uniquely positioned to act on the issue and advocate for the region and our agencies. It is imperative that RTA execute the report's plan to put in place sustainable, stable funding on which we can rely. We applaud the plan's goal of collaborating with regional partners to identify funding options and revenue proposals and pursue a targeted legislative strategy. While federal funding will last CTA into 2025, the work to secure additional funding must take place now, and there is no time to wait. RTA's strategic plan identifies multiple revenue ideas, but unfortunately, there will be no single revenue source that generates enough funding to close the entire regional budget gap. As such, we will need to focus on multiple revenue ideas that could be effectuated next year, as many of the ideas will take time to implement and collect the new revenue. As we all know, expense reductions or higher fares are not enough to cover projected budget gaps. Therefore, as a region, we need RTA to be a clear voice and champion for equitable and sustainable transit funding for our riders. CTA undoubtedly agrees that the other aspects of RTA's plan, including continuing to address ADA accessibility, climate initiatives, capital planning, and the customer experience, are critical for transit to thrive and grow. We agree because these are at the core of our daily business, and through our Meeting the Moment plan, we are laser focused on making improvements where they are needed and focusing on the experience of our diverse ridership. But all of CTA's actions are dependent upon having the funds to support us now and into the future. All of the important desirable actions identified in the RTA strategic plan are achievable, but only if the funding is available to act on them. We call on RTA to swiftly take action with regards to identifying and securing a funding source for future years. Thank you.
Thanks, Nora, very much. Just one point that I think sometimes gets lost. To the CTA's credit, I know that the American Public Transportation Association looked at all major transit agencies nationwide and how they conducted themselves during the pandemic and rated the CTA the #1 agency in handling the pandemic. So I think that's a feather in your cap before we forget what it was really like at the height of the pandemic. Nationwide, the group of peers of yours thought the CTA did the best job of any transit agency in the United States in handling COVID. So thanks, Nora, very much. Jim?
Thank you very much, Chairman, members of the board. On behalf of Metra's ridership, Metra's board, and all the Metra's employees, I appreciate the opportunity to be here today to comment. As you probably know or read in the paper, Metra's board passed our strategic plan yesterday. It was very important to our board that our plan aligned with the regional plan, and so that was definitely emphasized. The process that you used, I really enjoyed. The fact that stakeholders were brought in during this time and asked their opinion was valued. The service board's opinions were valued. This is the most collaborative plan that's ever been put together, and Metra really supports that. Again, our board was really concerned that our plan is not rogue and running off in a different direction, and that it was aligned, and that absolutely happened through this process. As we passed our plan yesterday, I also was thinking about how this is a moment in time. As it is, as I've said many a times before, anybody who says anything about COVID today, you got it wrong, because 3 months from now, 3 years from now, you'll be proven wrong. And we are still on that journey. We're on that journey of COVID, but we're also on a journey that my colleague next to me pointed out. It's really about funding. The pandemic only accelerated the funding problems. The funding problems have always been here. You know, when you talk about Metra, and we are very grateful to DOT for giving us $117 million to work on our 1890s bridges, that's only a dent in the problems that we have to solve. So it's not just operational funding, it is that capital funding. The service boards, I'm very proud to say, working with President Carter, Executive Director Mesker, and Leanne, have never been more collaborative. I think the pandemic, if anything, has brought the service boards more together in a unified, but yet distinctively different missions. We all have a little bit of a different mission, but we also share the same problems. We do need to stop measuring everything on ridership. We do need to stop relying on the fares as a way of measuring whether transit is successful. And that message has to come from the RTA as we speak to our further stakeholders. So again, I'm really excited about the plan. Don't go changing too much today as you vote on it, because I already bought our board in on the fact that we're aligned with you. So thank you again. Congratulations to the RTA, the staff, and congratulations to this board. Job well done.
Thank you, Jim. Just one comment on fare boxes. Nora, I have a daughter at your alma mater, the University of Wisconsin-Madison, who just did a paper on fare box recovery. I don't know where she picked that one up, but she was probably plagiarizing Jessica Hector Sue's work, but don't tell her professors that. But she looked at fare box recoveries in other cities. I mean, Austin's at 9%. Most major cities are 20, 25% at the most, and we're at 50%. So our fare box recovery is off by a factor of 100% at least. Nobody has our requirements for that nationally, just because structurally the funding mechanism doesn't work if that's it. And as Jim said so articulately, the COVID just kind of percolated and brought this problem, what was there before, to a head just a little bit quicker. Melinda, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to say a few words about the RTA's plan, Transit as the Answer, and the significance of the moment we're in now. Let me begin by pledging PACE's support for this plan. PACE has been part of the process that led to the development of the Transit as the Answer, and we will partner with you through its implementation as well. Our regional transit system plays a critical role in driving our economy and supporting the residents of Northeastern Illinois. And that is why I'm happy my colleagues, CTA, Metra, and the RTA all agree on the key challenges we will face and need to address over the next 5 years specifically. The need to secure a stable and fair funding source for our essential services, and the need to provide those services safely, equitably, efficiently, and in an environmentally conscious way. PACE adopted its own plan, strategic plan, Driving Innovation, about 1.5 years ago, and is reassuring to see that the RTA's plan echoes many of the goals in ours. PACE has made tremendous progress on many of our initiatives, including our electric bus and fleet transition plan, Project Zero, which lays the groundwork for purchasing electric vehicles and building the infrastructure to support them. Service transformation, including the implementation of innovative and flexible service options. We started the expansion of our on-demand program. We partnered with First TNCs to supplement our paratransit service. We implemented part-time van pool fare and introduced new van pool program called Van Go, which allows eligible riders to access a vehicle remotely for use as first mile, last mile option. We've done technology enhancements, which consists of upgrades for our ADA service, including the launch of Where's My Bus, which is a system similar to Uber, where you can see the bus coming on your computer or on your handheld device. We launched our Mobility as a Service, MOS app, which provides access to the services we offer in one central location, allowing the ability of our customers to easily plan their trips. And regional connectivity, which is already underway as we continue to work with CTA and Metra to partner on shared fare products to ensure a more seamless service for our passengers. I want to highlight these achievements to reinforce to this board that the service PACE provides will be a vital part of our regional transportation system's progress towards the RTA's plan. I appreciate your continued support, and I assure you that PACE will share what we've learned with our peers in order to support them. I'm pleased that the RTA's advocacy and action agendas support what we are doing. Having RTA and the service boards on the same page, especially in the effort to ensure operations are fully funded, is utterly important, and PACE will be counting on the RTA support as we move this case to legislators, partners, and the public. I will end my remarks by reiterating a reoccurring theme in Transit as the Answer. The document's introduction says it best. It's a time of great change, and transit is ready. This is true of PACE and our sister agencies. We are ready, and our riders in our region need us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for all the innovation at PACE. You rattled off a number of things this morning, and it's just the tip of the iceberg. But, you know, when I read input from different people, there are literally hundreds of things during the pandemic that the three service boards and the RTA have been doing. So when people ask, well, you know, why did it take so long to get Transit as the Answer out? You know, first of all, I've never seen, and I've been involved in various facets of government my entire professional life. This probably has the most input of any strategic plan I've ever seen at any level of Illinois government. But there are hundreds of things, if you took time to read this, that Dorval and Nora and Jim and Melinda and their staffs have been doing during the pandemic. So we just don't wait for the Transit is the Answer document. We've been doing them. As the American Public Transportation pointed out, Public Transportation Association, when they said CTA did the best job of any transit system nationally during the COVID crisis. And just as one little dose of reality, one of the crowning achievements, and there are so many of innovation that I point to, is bus on shoulder. And Melinda, you know, we work on that and we're expanding it, but it's been an amazing success story. It took almost a decade for that authorization to come out of Springfield to do the bus on shoulder. So, you know, when I talk about our partners in this, you know, I hope everybody like me, I'm an anxious guy. Mayor Emanuel used to say he's an impatient guy. I'm an impatient guy. And we all know we need to work together and do it more quickly than the state has perhaps in the region has perhaps done it before. And Bus on Shoulder, one of the crowning success stories, you know, took a long time. And hopefully things will not take as long to come to a fruition for the benefit of the riders and our economy and our communities. But thank you all very, very much for all of your, and say thank you to your staff too. Really appreciate it. Any comments or questions? Yes, Director Melvin.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really have a question, but first I'd like to say it's a really fine, handsome plan. It's nice, and it's really well done, and you know, we appreciate all the hard work. And I love the video. I don't know who did the video, but my interest didn't flag at all. I loved it. I thought it was beautifully done. So thank you for that too. Enjoyed it very much. I hear the concern about funding. Is this seen as largely a federal solution or a state solution as you guys think about this? It's nice to have you here all singing from the same hymnal too, because that hasn't always been the case in the past. So I'd like to see that. But if you could just help us understand what your thoughts are about that, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, I'll take a stab at it, but I'll just say it doesn't matter where the money comes from. In all seriousness, this transit system is funded operationally locally. And the federal government's always been there to help us take care of that state of good repair needs. So if that needs to be broken and readjusted, then there's conversations that need to happen. But at this point in time, without that federal relief money, these service boards wouldn't be in the condition they're in today.
I will echo that. Without the federal relief money, we would be cutting service and be in a terrible state of decay, all the service boards. And I will say that having the money has given us the ability to work better together. We're not worried about, well, if we do this pass, CTA might get a few more cents and we might get a few less cents. We've been able to work better together to provide better service for our customers. So, and I agree with Jim. I don't care where the money is coming from, just send the money. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'd echo what's already been said. We're agnostic about the source of the money. I think those exact questions, though, Director Melvin, about what's the best strategy of which revenue source to pursue and what information is needed to be successful at getting that one, or those are the kind of conversations we want to make sure are happening now and as soon as possible to get the most funding possible.
Thank you. Thank you.
Director Peng.
You know, I am going to vote yes on this strategic plan. It is incredibly well done, but nothing's going to happen unless we can get the whole region to lean in to help find the revenues. I don't think we're going to get a lot of federal money in the next years. So that means we have to start now very urgently bringing together business people, riders, communities, and the civic world, and all singing the same thing. You know, of course, that'll align to details in the plan, but I really am worried about the cliffs that are ahead of us, which I know we've all talked about. But I think it's the most urgent thing that we can do is start working on revenues now.
Director Colson.
Couple of quick comments, if I might. I think it's a fair criticism that was echoed by some of the speakers that there's no specific implementation detailed in the plan. But I think that the strategic plan should be more like a constitution. It should be it sets out broad principles, strategic goals. And I'm not sure it would be wise to be locked into really specific timelines, which could straitjacket us. I think we need to be flexible. None of us know what the future is going to bring. A lot of the areas like crime and funding and even the electrical grid are largely out of our control, other than we can advocate for our position. So I don't think strict implementation details are even desirable. There are ways to track periodically the progress or lack thereof on reaching these goals, and I hope these organizations that spoke today will help us be part of that. Most important thing, though, as it has been mentioned, is the process, the impressive process that was followed to get to this product. Sort of self-authenticates, the integrity of the plan, because this is not just the RTA saying this; it's all of the stakeholders. It's their report, really, more than the RTA's. So I think while we can nitpick over language here or there, maybe each of us may weigh the priorities a little differently. This is, on balance, a solid product, and it deserves our support.
Thank you, Bill. Director Carey.
I want to echo some of the comments that Director Colson just made. But first of all, I want to thank Jessica and her team. I want to thank all the service boards. I want to thank the hundreds of organizations and people that were involved in this process. As quite a few people have said, it's been an extremely collaborative process and has resulted in what I think is an excellent product. I also recognize the comments made about the lack of specificity, but this to me is not an implementation plan. To me, what comes next is the implementation plan, and I think some of those plans are already in the works. They're not in this document. So as a board member, I would challenge, and also I think we owe it to the hundreds of people that have been involved in this process to very transparently update on what's next. And I know Jessica mentioned updates to the board every month, which is great, and quarterly meetings. And I know you're going to bring more people into the process as we attack all of the different issues here. But if there was a way, and I'm trying not to make work for the staff, but if there was a way to, just as when we were going through this process, you had the working group memos out there, you had the working group documentations, the minutes from all the meetings, you're very transparent, to do the same thing as we go through some of these issues and attack them. I think that will put some people's minds at ease, and including the board members, knowing that we're really acting on this. I agree the funding is huge. The funding issue is huge, and I think staff is probably already working on that, but it isn't in this document, so that comes next. And things like fair integration was mentioned by a gentleman from Environmental Law Policy Center. That's, I think, a confusing issue. It is to me a little bit, because you hear people say, do they want a combined fare so they can pay one fare and go on multiple buses and trains, or do they want to be able to use a single form of payment? So that to me is an issue that perhaps we could bring some clarity to as we look at that. And lastly, I think a lot of the actions that are, when we talk about electrification, we talk about fare integration, there's things that are going on in the service bureaus. So how do we kind of combine that? And I'm not saying we need to duplicate everything that the service bureaus have on their websites, but maybe we link to it and say, okay, well, this is something that we said we were going to work on, and look at what they're doing at PACE, look at what they're doing at CTA or Metra. So I'm rambling on a little bit, but I do want to congratulate everybody, and I think it's an excellent plan, and I intend to vote on it.
Thank you, Director. Any other comments or questions?
Mr. Chairman, Director Sagar's got a comment.
Yeah, Dr. Sagar, good morning.
Yes, good morning. I apologize for not being able to be there in person. This is one day that I certainly wish that I were, but that was not possible today. I want to secondly apologize to everyone because I'm going to be a bit redundant, but truly, I believe that this effort was an exceptional, noble effort, and that it does worth repeating some of the comments that have already been made. I want to join the chairman in saying that I don't believe that I have ever experienced or known or had evidence and an extensive planning effort as this one has undertaken to outreach to people and to make sure that we were getting not only comment from various agencies, organizations, the service agencies, but also the public at large, the users, those people who live by the transit system. And so I'm just incredibly grateful, and I want to commend everyone in the staff that has done just an exceptional job of that, and those who helped us with the service agencies and their outreach as well. I think this has been just a truly, truly noble effort. I also want to give respect and appreciation to those individuals who made public comment earlier in our meeting today, and also to recognize that they don't just represent an organization, they represent other residents and other individuals who are incredibly knowledgeable and thoughtful with regards to the import of transit as well. And I agree that, yes, there are many, many things that we can do and could possibly have added to this larger plan. But I think that we really need to focus on the concept that planning is not a finite effort. It is an ongoing, constant effort. And that in order to be able to plan efficiently and properly, you have to start with solid foundations. And to me, that's what this plan today has done for us. It has provided us with an incredibly solid approach to guide us well into the future, given the challenges that we are facing today. And I think everyone has really focused on significant concerns and needs that are requisite for our planning process, not the least of which is the whole funding concept. And I absolutely concur with Jim's comments. I absolutely concur with Sarah's comments and Bill's comments with regards to financing. There's no question about the fact that funding is a primary, if not the absolute, of our planning to the future. But the thing of it is, as Jim said, we've known this for a long time. It's not just COVID that brought us here. COVID accelerated the pace at which we came to this tremendous urgency. But this has been a concern that we have all known existed for many years, and we need to focus on that. And so my challenge, I think, to our board, as well as to the service agencies, but to every single agency and organization out there, is to become a partner. And I say this for individual users as well, individual planners as well. Become a partner in this process as we collectively, as we in the aggregate, go out to try to support funding efforts. It's going to take each and every one of us to get that job done, and only then we'll be able to move forward with some of the other significant goals and strategies and objectives that we have. So with that, I will just say I intend to support this plan. I want to congratulate one and all who have had such an important impact in putting it together, and I'm very, very proud of what we are offering on the table today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sauger. Well said. Director Ross.
Mr. Chairman, at the risk of sounding like a show for our staff, I want to thank them again for doing a great job of pulling this plan together and providing opportunities for input from throughout the region. One of my concerns originally was that we saw an input from sources other than just here in the city, and I think that took place. I would hasten to add, however, that if this plan is as good as we think it is, it will allow us to address the concerns that were raised by the speakers today. I think it provides a perfect platform for that. And as some of my other colleagues have said, I believe that we can start on implementation now, and that we can be transparent in showing the public what our goals are and how we intend to achieve those. Finance is a major issue. As an example, I don't think we're going to be able to do anything with equity as long as we're required by our fare box recovery ratio to serve only the routes that produce the greatest riders. So those things are in conflict. So we have to address that. if we're going to do anything about addressing issues of equity and access. But my compliments to the staff. I think this is an outstanding job. We appreciate all the input that we've received from all of the constituent groups that participated in whether it was in person or in writing. This is a good plan. Now let's make it work. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Any other comments or questions?
Mr. Chairman, Director Gorman has a comment.
Director Gorman, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the time. Without sounding redundant, I know Chairman Diller did mention that the strategic plan, it's not the be-all, end-all. It's definitely a fluid document and an exceptionally great foundation to start building upon this collaborative starting point. So with that, obviously, implementation, will be an issue until the funding issues are all addressed, but I'm so proud of, everybody involved in the process, and just want to thank everybody for taking the time, whether it was staff, people from the community outreach regionally, transit boards, and the electeds getting involved in this process. We look forward to carrying forward this document as it is a continued work in progress, and look forward to, achieving and setting these goals and being part of this process. And also the RTA was at the forefront of addressing this funding issue, and when you're at the front line, you take a lot of arrows. So I am proud of, the work that's done, and look forward to hopefully, filling those funding gaps and making this work. But thank you to my fellow colleagues, and I look forward to supporting this document.
Thank you, Director Gorman. Any other comments or questions? I have one for Melinda. I assume, and in fact, I know that you and the CTA commiserate and cross-pollinate and talk about electric buses, do you not?
We do. We do on a regular basis. I think CTA has different issues than we do, but we're both moving forward on our joint concerns. We're putting our start of our electric will be, the major push will be up in Waukegan, up north. So we're separated out from CTA. There's no connection there. But we're also, right now, we're going to start running one electric bus on 95th Street, 381, and it feeds right into the CTA. So it's a joint effort every day for everything that we do together.
Great. No, thank you. And Nora, when Dorval was here, and he reminds me all the time, on electric buses, judge them at the end of the programs, that it's a long trek, and there is nobody that I know that understands federal funding better than President Carter at the CTA. So it's it's a lengthy process, and again, I'm as frustrated as anybody with how long some of this stuff takes. And just rest assured, we're moving as fast as we can forward. Jessica and to the staff, there was a governor that once always used to remind us that no good deed goes unpunished, but your work is yeoman's work. And because of COVID, we have a much better understanding. Lots of data was collected in surveys of who our real core ridership is. It was, I think, not an eye-opener, but we have real solid data as to who the real core is. It helps the equitable arguments that Mayor Lightfoot and others make every day in the city council. This is a great plan. I do want to say, you always have to separate out operations from capital. And again, I want to thank Governor Pritzker and the members of the legislature for the Rebuild Illinois plan. It was historic. It was great. We're very grateful, but we still have a state of good repair need. It did not take care of everything. And Director Melvin, this document here to me is we look at all sources of revenue. It's local, it's regional, it's the state of Illinois, and it's the federal Congress as well. The state of Illinois on the operations side, and again, thank you for the capital money, Governor and others. On the operations side, the state of Illinois does not do what other states do. You heard me last meeting talk about London spends 9 times per capita what we do. New York, 3 to 4 times more per capita than we do. So operationally, the state of Illinois, California has its own public transportation fund out of Sacramento. So operationally, the state does not participate in mass transit nearly as much as what other major states do. And, you know, we need to balance and remember there's operations versus capital. You know, we did the job with the help of so many on the Capital and Rebuild Illinois project. And people go, well, how are you going to get the legislature's attention? Jeremy and others and Leanne and myself, we have begun, you know, hundreds of meetings with elected officials and civic leaders. Last but not least, we have given the public nearly 2 years' notice that there's a fiscal cliff. Other cities, and my cat's off because of the continued pressure from us, as well as the financial stewardship at the 3 service boards. Other cities are almost out of some of their federal money. They don't have 2 years to work and to plan as to what will happen when our fiscal cliff comes to passage. They have already spent much of their money and have not had the discipline that Dorval and Nora and Jim and Melinda have exercised at their 3 service boards. So there are no easy answers. We're ready for the heavy lift. And again, my thanks to all of you and the staff for this just outstanding document. We look forward to working with everybody to move this big battleship of mass transit in the right direction in the future. So with that, how about a motion or a second, we adopt the Transit is the Answer strategic plan. Director Ross moves, seconded by Director Pang, that we adopt this regional transit strategic plan. And with that, Mr. LaMarche, Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Director Indulcio.
Yes.
Director Carey.
Aye.
Director Colson. Director Fuentes.
Aye.
Director Gathing.
Aye.
Director Gorman. Director Gorman. Come back. Director Groven. Aye. Director Lewis. Director Lewis indicates that he's on the meeting. I think he's having some connection issues, though. Director Melvin.
Yes.
Director Pang.
Yes.
Director Ross.
Yes.
Director Sager.
Yes.
Chairman Dillard.
Yes.
Coming back to Director Gorman.
Apologize, yes.
12 ayes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and thanks to everybody. And we will, this document will be talked about a lot in the future. So thank you so much. With that, it is adopted, Mr. Secretary. Item 7A is an update on, and Jim, Nora, and Melinda, thank you again. Really appreciate it. Item 7A is an update on the activities of the RTA Transit Access Citizens Advisory Board, and Jackie Forbes. Good morning. Thank you. Try to follow that act.
I was going to say, it's a tough act to follow. Good morning, Chairman Dillard and members of the Board of Directors. Thank you for your time this morning. My name is Jackie Forbes, and I am the chairperson of the RTA Citizens Advisory Board, or CAB. I'm here to provide an update of the activities of the board. The RTA CAB last met on January 23rd, 2023. During this meeting, RTA staff briefed members on the 2023 to 2027 capital program and federal funding opportunities, provided an overview of programs and services offered by RTA's Mobility Services Department. They updated members on RTA's new FAIR Programs online portal and ADA paratransit certification pilot, and discussed the agency's goal to expand the role of the RTA CAB and link its work to the implementation of the strategic plan. Several RTA CAB members expressed support for the continued improvements to mobility services programs and services. They expect the new online portal and paratransit certification pilot will streamline the eligibility process and make it more convenient for users across the region. Speaking personally, And on behalf of my fellow members, I am excited to work with the RTA staff to implement the strategic plan and continue to evolve and strengthen the role of the Citizens Advisory Board, CAB. Rider and stakeholder participation in transit planning and decision-making is critical to the success of the region's transit program and system. The next meeting of the RTA CAB will be held at 10 a.m. on April 24th. And this concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions of Jackie or comments? If not, thank you much, Jackie. Appreciate it. Item 7B is the presentation of the 2023 audit plan in Lelaine Alvarez. Good morning. It's all yours.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Lelaine Alvarez, the RTA's Chief Auditor. Today, I will be presenting the 2023 audit plan, which highlights audit projects and related work proposed for the year. This plan was developed and has been thoroughly evaluated and discussed with the Audit Chair, Director Carlson. Next slide, please. The Audit Division has two primary functions: the oversight audit and internal audit. First, the oversight audit, which is conducted in accordance with the RTA Act that mandates an audit of the service boards at least once every 5 years to ensure management, financial, and performance is effective and efficient. The Act also requires an audit of the ADA paratransit program every 3 years to ensure that the services provided are eligible under the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990. This particular audit was completed last year, and the next audit will be in fiscal year 2025. Finally, audits must be conducted in compliance with external or other funding agencies' requirements, such as IDAT, FTA, and CMAP. These audits required by law or by agreement with the funding source are the routine audits that we conduct regularly in order to ensure compliance and efficiency. Our second function is the internal audit, which is conducted to provide an objective and independent assurance that assists in improving, in particular, the RTA's operations and risk mitigation control, reviewing of our own internal processes and programs to ensure proper compliance with any relevant laws or regulations, and evaluates the effectiveness and efficiency of internal control in place. Next slide. Let me start with the oversight audits as described in the materials provided to the board and available on the RTA website in detail. These audits are those required by RTA Act. RTA and other funding agencies to ensure that funds are spent appropriately, administered according to grant agreements, and followed the program management guidelines as represented here. These audits are strategically scheduled towards the third and fourth quarter of the year in order to not coincide with the Service Board's annual financial audit. Next slide. Continuing on, these types of audits are regular audits that we normally coordinated with individual service board and complete each year. We also review the compliance of the transparency portal on a quarterly basis to determine whether data is being reported timely and if there are any issues with the data presented. Additionally, we perform follow-up activities with any audit recommendations or observations that we encountered during our audit with RTA or each service boards as needed. Next slide. Now, let's look at the internal audit projects. This chart represents different types of audits, which are normally completed annually to ensure compliance, internal controls are in place, and working properly, and process and procedures are followed effectively. As an example, one of the audits is for the payroll compensation for staff and board members. In here, we examine test, and review the financial records for timeliness and reasonableness. Another audit here is the credit card purchases, in which the objective is determine that purchases are for business purposes, it's reasonable, and within the prescribed dollar limit for a specific employee. Next slide. Continuing, in this chart are additional activities that we will focus on. For instance, the Consolidation Technical Assistance Program, or known as CTAP project closeout. These are projects funded by grants received from FTA, IDAT, and CMAP, where we conduct a formal closeout audit to officially document that the project funded by the grants has been completed timely and within budget. Another audit is cybersecurity, where we evaluate the adequacy of our controls against hacking and penetration, ransomware demands, and other malicious attempts to our system. This concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. 7C is the presentation of the 2023 Community Planning Program of projects, and Michael Horsting, welcome.
Good morning. Testing. Great. Thank you so much. Happy to be here. Michael Horsting, manager of the local planning team here at the RTA. And this morning I'll be sharing updates with you about the community planning program and the results of our recent call for projects. But first I thought I'd take a couple of minutes just to share with you a little bit of background about the program. So next slide, please. This year marks the 25th anniversary of the RTA's involvement with planning communities around public transportation and encouraging transit supportive land use. Through the community planning program, the RTA provides technical assistance to local governments and the RTA service boards to conduct transit-focused planning studies and plan implementation activities that advance the RTA's strategic plan. Transit is the answer. By providing local governments with the technical assistance needed to complete plans, as well as support to implement those plans, the work of the RTA helps municipalities in the region develop walkable and more sustainable communities near transit stations and along transit corridors. The goal of these studies and activities is to support transit ridership, meet economic development needs, expand job and housing accessibility, and improve the overall transit experience. The program and its projects are managed by the local planning team, who have continuously adapted the program over time. Most recently, adding various forms of implementation assistance, launching the Access to Transit program related to implementation, focusing on equity, supporting curb management and micromobility, and most recently, compensating residents for their time to participate in the planning process. Going forward, implementation of Transit is the Answer will continue to be the focus of the program in future years. Next slide, please. Every year we do complete an annual report that serves as a summary of previous project awards and recent activities related to the RTA's community planning and access to transit programs. The report format is an online story map, which is interactive and allows the reader to scroll and click through visuals, maps, and text that all come together and tell the story about recent activities through the two programs. So I do invite you to navigate to the community planning page on our website to find and view this report. Next slide, please. So last fall, we did hold a call for projects, September 26th through October 14, in partnership again with CMAP. We received 11 applications for assistance from 10 municipalities and community organizations. Staff then reviewed, researched each application, interviewed the applicants, discussed those applications with various municipal departments, and solicited feedback on each application from the service boards, as well as other partnering agencies in the region. The applications were evaluated based on their alignment with Transit is the Answer, the feasibility of the proposed project, and the applicant's ability to partner with the RTA to complete the work. Next slide. Projects that we offered last fall fall really into two different categories, those that work to complete a plan and those that work towards implementing an already existing plan. Under planning, TOD plans were offered to create a vision for compact development styles with a mixture of land uses and high quality environments for accessing transit. Corridor plans identify ways to attract more people to travel a corridor using transit by strategizing to improve access to transit for people walking and using a bicycle, and identifying development design and policy strategies that are more pedestrian and bicyclist friendly. Neighborhood mobility hubs and mobility improvement plans help municipalities identify very specific infrastructure improvements for pedestrians and bicyclists that are designed to increase the reach and accessibility of transit services. And finally, curb management studies used to explore the use of curb space in transit-served areas and create recommendations to better manage the growing and competing needs for curb space in transit-served areas, all while prioritizing the use of bus and rail. Recognizing that implementing the vision created in a plan is often a difficult task, especially at the local municipal level, the RTA provides various types of implementation assistance that support a number of frequent plan recommendations, such as updating a zoning code within the municipality, establishing a special financing district, and pairing municipalities with volunteers from the private development community who offer real-world feedback to them on their economic development strategies near transit. Next slide, please. We established 4 priorities to guide the selection of the applications into the program. First, we prioritized technical assistance that would benefit disadvantaged populations by focusing our assistance and our selections to high-need municipalities, as well as to project areas in economically disconnected and disinvested areas across the region. Secondly, we supported existing relationships by offering implementation activities to previous planning recipients. We prioritized assistance to emerging topics, challenges, and innovative ideas. And lastly, we sought to foster community empowerment by ensuring projects selected can have a robust and inclusive engagement process that ensures all voices of the community can be heard. To advance this, the RTA offers compensation for time and expenses to residents in communities of need to decrease barriers to participating in the planning process and to optimize our efforts for creating a plan with the most benefit to the community and its residents. This compensation will help remove barriers to participating in the planning process for community members whose voices and opinions are important, but who may not have otherwise been able to participate due to transportation expenses, childcare, family responsibilities, or job work obligations. Next slide, please. So after reviewing all of the applications, we selected these 6 projects to move forward and be included in the 2023 program. They include advancing a mobility hub near the 51st Street Green Line station in Bronzeville in partnership with Equiticity, a nonprofit organization, conducting a TOD study in portions of downtown Joliet, identifying mobility and economic development strategies with the Village of Riverdale, convening a panel of developers in Des Plaines along future Pace Pulse Dempster line, and studying the feasibility of establishing financing districts near transit services in Geneva and University Park. The total preliminary budget for all 6 projects is $468,500, which is comprised of $435,750 in RTA funds, with a remaining amount $32,750 in local match. Next slide, please. Wanted to make one quick note about equity and transparency in our decisions. We use CMAP's community cohorts grouping tool to determine the level of local capacity and technical assistance needed of each applicant that we selected, which in turn measures the equity in our decisions of where the RTA's assistance and funding is being spent. This cohort evaluation tool assigns each municipality throughout the region to one of 4 cohorts based on 4 factors: population, income, tax base per capita, and percent of population located in an economically disconnected or disinvested area. Using this tool to measure the equity of the 2023 program shows that 64% of the RTA's funding will be going to communities of very high need across the region, with another 26% to moderate need communities and 10% to communities of lower need. Finally, we also did conduct a community public comment period from January 17 through February 3, during which time we did receive 2 favorable comments. Next slide, please. So this meeting today really is the final step in the project selection process, and we intend to begin work on each of these 6 new projects early this year, starting in the spring. And this concludes my presentation. I'm happy to hear any comments or answer any questions that anyone might have.
Thank you, Michael. Questions or comments? I was just sort of here smiling, reading a couple of letters from folks that have already written in on the transit is the answer, saying we need to do this at the RTA. Look at standards of transparency, equity. Yours is almost 70% in this program. Cooperation with other groups. CMAPs very much involved, Michael, in what you do, and to make sure that our things are aligned with policy goals, which you said you've done. So, you know, I'm sort of snickering at what people have written in, knowing that you do this on a daily basis and have before we started transit, and the answer, or is the answer. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's a great program. And I hear nothing but good things from folks locally who thank the RTA staff for really guiding them for their municipalities and their projects in the right direction. You know, when they talk about the professionalism of our staff, and that's you and everybody else. So thank you.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Thanks for sharing that comment.
All right, let's move on to 7D, which is the presentation of the quarterly performance report for the 4th quarter of 2022. And Peter Farnwald, welcome. Good to see you again.
Oh, thank you, Chairman and directors. So again, I'm here to present the year-to-date performance results for the year-end 2022 in comparison to 2021. Next slide. So now with the adoption of the new strategic plan, Transit is the Answer, this will be the final quarterly report on the 3 goals of Invest in Transit. So in addition to the usual reporting and performance measures from Invest in Transit, I'll also reflect on some trends over the last 5 years and our progress in reporting and transparency. Next slide. So our first strategic goal, deliver value on our investment, was focused on 2 key questions. Did we get more funding, and are we efficient stewards of the funds we have? And in this area, RTA succeeded in getting more capital funding. We developed a new performance-based capital allocation formula, new tools for displaying the regional capital program, and a new map of capital projects. We launched several new dashboards and revamped the budget book. And over the course of the last 5 years, all these efforts has helped to improve transparency. Next slide. So for this goal, we have been monitoring progress by tracking capital and operating funding and expenditures. Looking at annual results, capital funding decreased by $543 million. And as mentioned in our prior quarterly reports, this large year-over-year decrease stems from the granting of all the remaining Rebuild Illinois bond funds in the 1st quarter of 2021. The annual capital expenditures of $1.2 billion was a 3% increase, or $35 million over 2021. And expenditures are increasing as the service boards move from design to construction of important projects that are funded with the Rebuild Illinois bonds and the PAYGO funds. The system-wide inflation-adjusted operating cost per passenger trip of $9.50 was 22% lower, while the fare revenue per passenger trip of $1.56 was 2 cents higher. Both of these figures are improvements that stem directly from increased ridership, which improved by over 26% in 2022. Next slide. So one of the strategies of Invest in Transit was to advocate for additional capital funds, and the region was successful in significantly boosting the program. In 28, there was no state support, and the capital program totaled $840 million. Throughout the 5-year span of Invest in Transit, RTA and the service boards proactively worked to acquire more funding to meet the large capital needs. And by 2020, one of the most significant capital bills ever was adopted, bringing $2.6 billion in bond funds, which were programmed again in 2021. And in addition, the $227 million annual sustainable funding from the motor fuel tax. And as noted with the bond proceeds fully programmed, the yearly total of 2022 shows a reduction compared to the peak years. But another new funding increase, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or IIJA, has bolstered federal formula funds by nearly 40% and opened up new discretionary opportunities to the region. So over the course of the 5 years of Invest in Transit, the capital program more than doubled, ending 2022 at $1.8 billion. But as we embark on the new strategic plan, we will continue to advocate for and report on new funding opportunities, as well as important projects that are able to be supported with these increased funds. Next slide. So moving on, the second goal of Invest in Transit was to build on the strengths of our network, where we asked the question is, did the region become more transit friendly, and are we focusing our limited resources wisely? And although the pandemic significantly impacted all aspects of the system, we worked to maintain focus on improving the existing network. For this goal, RTA continued to deliver robust programs of community planning and access to transit projects throughout the last few years. Service boards expansions included such projects as the Red Line Extension, the Pace Bus on Shoulder, and Pulse programs, and metro stations. We deployed hundreds of new signs and continued to update maps and customer tools to improve the experience over the last 5 years. Next slide. And for this goal, we have been reporting vehicle revenue miles, which is the total miles that buses and rail cars travel in revenue service, as this reflects the amount of service available to our riders. The total number of vehicle revenue miles are shown by the gold bars over the last 10 years, and year-to-year over percentages are noted at the top. Vehicle revenue miles for 2022 was 1.3% lower compared to 2021, but 14.7% lower compared to 2013. Next slide. And for the second spotlight, let's look at the impact the pandemic has had over to our region and our peers. For two performance indicators, ridership and vehicle revenue miles. As you can see in the chart on the left, the Chicago region lags behind most of the peers for ridership recovery, with 2022 ridership hovering around 50% of what it was in 2018. The chart on the right shows the 5-year change in vehicle revenue miles. In 2022, Chicago offered just over 16% less service miles compared to 2018, which puts us more towards the middle of the pack. Looking at both indicators together, it tells us that we have the capacity to accommodate ridership increases as more people return to transit. The need to adapt to changing rider needs was there before and has been heightened by the pandemic, as we talked about, and is central to the advocacy and action agendas of the Transit is the Answer. Next slide. The third goal is stay competitive, which asks, are we providing the kind of services that people want to ride, and are people satisfied with it when they do? And before and during the pandemic, we delivered a portfolio of mobility pilots with Lyft, Move It, Uber, and Via in order to help transit be competitive. We also completed an ADA paired transit innovation study with Pace to help the service be more competitive, which they are now implementing. We also did a lot of public engagement, most recently about our work, and also through surveys. Next slide. And for this third goal, we track ridership and metrics related to speed and reliability. So 22 system-wide ridership was 284.6 million, 59 million higher than previous year. The system-wide average speed was 15.1 miles per hour, 2.2% higher. And on-time performance was 82.1% for CTA bus, up 2.6 percentage points, and 54.2% for CTA rail, a decrease of 4.2 percentage points. And Metro reported 95.4% on-time performance, an increase of 0.1 percentage points and exceeding their target of 95%. Pace bus on-time performance was not available. Next slide. And for our third spotlight, we will discuss our efforts to measure customer satisfaction. And since 2011, we have completed periodic regional customer satisfaction surveys with CTA, Metra, and PACE. And these are very large-scale survey efforts that include paper surveys handed out on board, combined with online efforts contacting riders through emails and other means. And these surveys are used to better understand the demographics and riding habits of our customers and have helped the service boards satisfy their federal Title VI reporting requirements. But over time, we've seen increasing numbers of responses coming to us electronically. And to take advantage of this interest in online responses, we have developed an online panel of about 3,000 members. And we have positioned this panel to be able to better and more quickly understand changing perceptions on selected topics. And we'll leverage the use of the panel's surveying to contribute to the implementation of Transit is the Answer. Slide. So in summary, over the past 5 years, capital funding increased in both state and federal levels. In the longer term, we will need to ensure continuation of those funding streams and seek others. In addition, we will be tracking projects moving from planning into construction to increase capital expenditures. And the reduction in regional service hours over the pandemic is less than the ridership loss. And survey methods have evolved and allow us to get more and more timely feedback from our riders, which helps us better understand our ongoing challenges. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Peter. Any questions or comments on the report? If not, thank you very much. Let's move on to 8A, and then the 8A is the resolution certifying the financial results for the fourth quarter of 2022. Kevin, welcome to the RTA team. It's great to have you out of county government, since our county counterparts or board chairs are responsible for a lot of the membership of the RTA, and you're a perfect addition and love where you're coming from and like your experience. So welcome.
Well, thank you. And thank you for such a kind introduction as well. So good morning, Chairman and the board members. Today, I will be asking the board to certify or approve this resolution to certify the service board's financial results through the fourth quarter of 2022 against the operating budgets adopted last May. As a reminder, these reports are based on unaudited reports that have been provided to the RTA by the service boards. So if there's any changes, material changes to those reports that have been provided to the RTA, we will report back to the board if that happens. So first, we'll take a look at our primary metric, which is evaluating the substantial accordance with budget, which is the operating deficit performance. Next slide, please. In this slide, the operating deficit results through December were favorable, as shown on the graph here. Favorable to budget for each of the service board and the region overall. Each service board's operating expenses were significantly lower than budgeted. Additionally, CTA, Metra, and PACE system-generated revenues were each above the budgeted amount. So this is helping with the graph and how we're showing the percentages here. ADA paratransit revenue was under budget due to the lower reimbursements that the RTA certification trips. So one note here is that the expense side of the ADA paratransit, the performance was enough to offset that revenue shortfall. And so accordingly, staff recommends a finding of being in substantial accordance with budgeted for each service board and the region as a whole, as shown on this graph. Next slide, please. This slide covers one of our routine updates, which is the status of the federal relief funding. As a region, as we're showing on the right side of your screen, as a region, we have now drawn down 43.4% or $1.5 billion of the $3.5 billion total that was allocated. In order to avoid an overdrawn state of a year-end, Metra and PACE did not requisition any COVID relief funding related to the December financial results. And there's no anticipation of any further drawdown applications for the rest of 2022, which will be performed when the final operating results and sales tax receipts are known. Nevertheless, we do anticipate that federal relief funds will begin to exhaust by 2025, as we have covered during the strategic plan and conversations. These will result in a projected annual budget gap of over $700 million beginning in year 2026 if the transit service levels are to be maintained. Ridership at that time is expected to have recovered 70% of pre-pandemic levels. And again, new funding sources will be needed, as we have comprehensively covered during the conversations that we have had today. So with that, this concludes my presentation. I know it's a short presentation, and I suppose it goes in line with the theme of the meeting today. I do want to say thanks to the service board staff and the staff of the RTA who collaborate to put these reports together for us to present. So with that, I'll hand it back to you, and if any questions.
Thank you, Kevin. Any questions or comments? Director Carey.
If I remember correctly, last year, the service boards were favorable to budget also rather significantly. And so this second year in a row, and I don't remember prior to that. So I assume that a good bit of it is reduced expenses based on staffing shortages? Is that a big part of it?
Correct. A lot of the savings on the expense side are related to vacancies that have remained open longer than expected. As we all know, that's affecting everybody across the economy, where the labor market and the shortage of people. So that is a true. Correct. Thank you.
I just like is when the budget starts to come around, which is always pretty soon. I just like to keep this in mind that maybe perhaps encourage the service boards to try to be a little more accurate, because as we look at the drawdown of the federal relief money, we'd like to be as accurate as possible on that, because we drew down, the boards across the board drew down less than anticipated by quite a bit. So anyway, just something to keep in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent comment. All right, with that, I need a motion and a second to approve this item as submitted. Director Groven moves, seconded by Director Gathing, that we adopt the item 8A. And with that, Mr. Secretary, please take the roll.
Sure. Director Indulcio.
Yes.
Director Carey.
Aye.
Director Colson. Yes. Director Fuentes. Aye. Director Gadding.
Aye.
Director Gorman.
Aye.
Director Groven.
Aye.
Director Lewis is present, indicates he is an aye. Director Melvin.
Yes.
Director Pang.
Yes.
Director Ross.
Yes.
Director Sager.
Yes.
Chairman Dillard.
Yes.
13 ayes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And that is adopted. I think we can address the following agenda items at the same time as they appear on the board agenda. The items for the consideration would include 8B, which is an ordinance authorizing an IGA with PACE for ADA paratransit certification site trips. Michael Vandercreek is here if you do have questions. 8C is an ordinance authorizing planning services task order contracts for community planning programs. And I know Jill Leary, see Jill is out here, who can answer questions if you have some. Same on 8D is an ordinance authorizing a contract for the Homewood Transit-Oriented Development Plan, and Jill can answer questions on that. And 8E is the approval of travel expenses as required. Any questions? Is it okay if we just take these all in one roll call? How about a motion in a second? Director Carey moves that we adopt these all at once, seconded by Director Fuentes. With that, one more roll call. Jeremy.
Director Indulcio.
Yes.
Director Carey.
Aye.
Director Colson. Director Fuentes.
Aye.
Director Gathing.
Aye.
Director Gorman.
Aye.
Director Groven.
Aye.
Director Lewis is an aye. Director Melvin.
Yes.
Director Pang.
Yes.
Director Ross.
Yes.
Director Sager,
Yes.
Chairman Dillard.
Yes.
13 ayes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and those are adopted. Thank you, everybody, for, it's been a productive meeting, a long meeting, and deeply appreciate your input and consideration and attendance today. Are there any new items for the board today? If not, just a reminder, our next meeting is March 16th at 9 a.m. pre-St. Patrick's Day. So March 16th at 2023 at 9 a.m. If there's no business, further business to, excuse me, as my voice gives out,